Hi, this is Brad Katz, Product Manager at NetApp SolidFire for Element OS, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about SnapMirror for NetApp HCI and SolidFire. This is a new capability that allows for snapshot replication between HCI and SolidFire systems and ONTAP FAS and AFF systems. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the use cases that are enabled, and then I'll show you a quick demo of the capabilities of the software. Before I jump into that, just a couple points about the requirements for using this feature. This is a new feature, so you'll need to be on the latest versions of both ONTAP operating system and Element operating system. Element is the storage OS for both SolidFire and NetApp HCI. So before you can use this feature, you need to be at version 9.3 of ONTAP and 10.1 of Element OS. So those are the minimum versions, or anything newer than that, of course, will work as well. The other thing to keep in mind is that NetApp HCI and SolidFire are block-based storage systems. So iSCSI storage for NetApp HCI and either iSCSI or Fiber Channel for SolidFire. So this is a feature that supports replication of block storage volumes only between SolidFire and ONTAP. It's not designed or intended or capable of replicating NFS volumes between the two. So with that, let me jump in and give you a little more information about the feature. The primary use case that we're supporting with this feature is DR replication between SolidFire HCI, where your primary volumes are on SolidFire, and your secondary or target volumes are on ONTAP. This is a DR, or a backup use case, and the software is built natively into both Element and ONTAP operating systems. So there's no additional software that needs to be installed in order to use this feature. You get to 10.1 and 9.3 respectively, and you're ready to go. From a licensing standpoint, a SnapMirror license is required on the ONTAP side, but there's no requirement for an additional license on the HCI side. The primary workflow that we're supporting here is you've got your HCI system and you want to replicate volumes over to ONTAP. So you'll set up volume relationships and replicate snapshots over either on a one-time or a scheduled basis. Once those snapshots reside on ONTAP, if for any reason you need to cut over to the ONTAP system and fail over, you can break the mirror, you can promote the volumes on ONTAP, and you can do full volume access on the ONTAP side. So you can write new data over there. When the issue's been mitigated back on the SolidFire side, you can resync those changes back to SolidFire, resume primary workloads on SolidFire, and then restore your initial protection and replication relationship, so you're once again protecting data from HCI onto ONTAP. So that's kind of your classic DR workflow. You can use this as more of a backup workflow as well, in that we'll support mirror and vaulting use cases where you have a larger number of snapshots that are stored on the secondary side, in this case ONTAP, where you want to have longer retention periods on the secondary side. So that's a use case as well. In addition to kind of the classic DR use case, there's a couple of other pretty interesting capabilities that are enabled with this new software. In a lot of cases, you may have multiple HCI systems in multiple locations, and you may have ONTAP infrastructure at a central data center, and you may want to replicate volumes from your branch offices or remote locations back to the central data center. And there's a couple things you can do with that kind of topology. For example, you may want to run data analytics, in which case you would go ahead and clone volumes on the ONTAP side and then present those to your compute resources that are going to run analytics. Similarly, you may want to do a centralized backup use case where all of your remote systems will replicate into a central location, and you'll go ahead and run all your backups centrally at your primary data center. In addition to that, there's a host of other data management features that are available as part of the NetApp Data Fabric that can be leveraged when you're replicating data from HCI over to ONTAP resources. For example, once my snapshots reside on ONTAP, I can clone those and send those to the cloud via AltaVault and have those reside long-term for archiving in an S3 interface. Or I may want to send those snapshots over to ONTAP, and then for long-term compliance reasons, put them in a snap lock mode. So all those things are possible. Once those snapshots reside on ONTAP, you can clone those volumes and you have capabilities to take advantage of any of the NetApp Data Fabric features that exist natively within ONTAP. So that's a quick overview of what the solution looks like. Let me jump into a demo and kind of give you a first-hand look at the way the system works. So what we're going to look at today is an example where I have a brand new SolidFire or HCI cluster, and I'm going to enable the SnapMirror feature for the first time. So I'll go ahead and kick this off. If you haven't seen it before, this is a look at the SolidFire user interface. This is what you would use primarily to manage this replication. On the other side, we'll take a look at the ONTAP System Manager UI, which should look familiar. And so we're going to kind of take a look at how this works. The first step is going to be to actually enable SnapMirror on your HCI cluster. If you're not replicating to an ONTAP cluster, you would leave this off and you wouldn't see any of the options to use the SnapMirror feature. If you want to replicate between SolidFire and ONTAP, you would go ahead and enable that, and that gives you all of these options. The first thing you're going to want to do is create an endpoint. An endpoint is simply an ONTAP cluster that has the ability to replicate with SolidFire. So it's extremely simple. All you need is the management IP of the ONTAP cluster and your admin credentials. You put those in, you say go, and the system goes out. It automatically discovers the intercluster lifts on the ONTAP system, and it will also guide you in terms of what are the next steps for setting up protection. So once you've got an endpoint configured, you're going to want to go ahead and create your volume relationships. This is a new cluster. I don't have any relationships at the moment, so I'm going to go over. In this case, it's a new cluster, so I need a volume to replicate before I can actually create a relationship. So I'll go ahead and create a volume. Let's say this is an HCI cluster, so I'm going to have VMware Data Store as my volume. I'm going to set my QoS policy. I'm going to enable SnapMirror on the volume. Keep in mind that we can only replicate 512E volumes, not 4K, so the system will warn you if you select the wrong block size type. Once I've got my volume, I can go ahead and I can create a relationship to protect this volume over to an ONTAP cluster. So you'll see that create a SnapMirror relationship is enabled as a volume option when I've got SnapMirror enabled on the cluster. So in this case, I've only got one endpoint configured. I have the option to either use an existing volume that exists on the ONTAP side, so I can sort through my SVMs, I can see volumes, and if I have a data protection volume that's already created, I can use that. More likely, I'm probably going to want to create a new volume. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select my SVM and my aggregate. The system will ensure that the aggregate I've selected has adequate size to house the volume. As you can see there, it'll stop me from creating it if the aggregate doesn't have enough space. And then I'm going to create a volume suffix name so that all the snapshots that get created on the ONTAP side will have the SnapMirror destination suffix. I can then pick any of my SnapMirror policies that exist on the ONTAP cluster. I've got access to all my default policies and schedules, and if I want to create any new custom policies or schedules, I would go ahead and manage that via ONTAP System Manager. Lastly, I have the option to initialize when I create the relationship. In this case, I'm going to create it without initializing, so we can go take a look at what the initialization process looks like. So you can see now if I refresh that, I've got my SnapMirror relationship and it's showing up as uninitialized. So the relationship's there, but I haven't done my baseline copy. Let's just kind of keep current on what's going on the System Manager side here. I can go over here and boom, there's my destination volume that was created when I created the relationship. You can see that I have an uninitialized relationship on the ONTAP side as well. So let's go ahead and initialize this. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice I didn't actually write any data to this volume, so this is going to be a nice quick initialization. So it'll give me the option. I'll say yes, I'm sure. And this will go ahead and send the baseline copy of data from my SolidFire HCI volume over to my ONTAP cluster. So let's refresh the status on this guy, and we'll see I now have a SnapMirrored ready to go relationship, which means my baseline copy has been copied over. And if I go back to System Manager, let's confirm that that made it over. There you go. I can see number one that my relationship is now SnapMirrored, and you can see that I have a new snapshot on this volume So I've now copied my data and I'm protected. I have the latest copy. I have some details about that transfer that I can see very easily in the SolidFire UI about the amount of data that was transferred and the time that it took. And now that I have an active relationship, I have several relationship actions that are available for me to manage that relationship. So for example, if I need to pause replication for a while, if my link between sites is overloaded, I need to slow down some transfers, I can go ahead and quiesce that. You'll see I quiesce it on the HCI side, and System Manager immediately shows the same status update. When things have quieted down, I can go ahead and resume that. And again, I'll resume it on SolidFire. I'll go back over to ONTAP, and I can manage that replication relationship with all of the relationship options that I have. So the other thing that I'd like to show you is how to set up a snapshot schedule on your HCI system so that you can create the snapshots that will be replicated over to ONTAP. Every time a SnapMirror relationship runs, it will create a new copy of the volume on the source side. So you'll have the latest snapshot that gets created every time a replication runs. If I want to have additional incremental snapshots that are created, maybe I only want to transfer snapshots daily, but I want to create more frequent snapshots, for example. In this case, I'm just going to create a daily snapshot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create that snapshot schedule on the SolidFire side. And I'm going to apply a SnapMirror label, which is what tells SnapMirror every time that relationship wakes up, it's going to look for snapshots with that label, and it will grab those snapshots. Because I don't want to spend too much time on this demo, what I did there is I just created a single point in time snapshot. And you can see now that I've got an additional snapshot created on the volume. And what I can do now is I can go and update the relationship, and it will look for any snapshots that have my SnapMirror label, grab those and pull them over and send them over to ONTAP. So I'm going to say update. I'm going to say yes, I'm sure. We'll go, and now we'll take a look and see if that snapshot transferred over. Looks like it took about a very short amount of time. I'll refresh System Manager, and you can see now I've got a total of 2 copies, and I've got one with my SnapMirror label present on the ONTAP side. So that gives you a general idea of some of the capabilities of the system. We're looking at making another video that'll show you how to actually fail over and fail back a volume, so keep an eye out for that. And hope this is a feature that a lot of customers take advantage of. It's a great way to really integrate the NetApp HCI and ONTAP portfolios together. So thanks for watching.